Hello, welcome to this lesson in engineering mechanics and statics. We're going to talk in this lesson about the dot product, but we're going to focus on really talking about cases in which the dot product is very useful. It's actually used in lots of areas in science and math. If you've taken a physics course, you've probably seen the dot product in terms of the definition of work, force dotted with distance, right? So that's kind of the physics realm. Here in mechanics, we're talking about force vectors, and eventually we'll be talking about moments and other things. We want to know under what circumstances we really want to use a dot product for something. And there's lots of different answers to that, but the big ones that come to mind, the ones that you're going to come to time and again, cases in which case you might use a dot product is, one case would be to find the angle theta between two vectors, right? So maybe you have, a rope going here, pulling with some force, and a rope going here, pulling with some force, and you have some information, and what you're really seeking to figure out is what is the angle there between these two vectors. Well, you can use the dot product to figure that out because of the definition of the dot product, A dot B, is A magnitude of A times the magnitude of B times the cosine of the angle between them. So if I solve and divide this guy over here, then what I'm going to get is the cosine of the angle theta is A dotted with B divided by the magnitude of A times the magnitude of B. And so then finally, I can say, now let's do it this way. The angle theta between these two vectors is the inverse cosine of what I've just written down here. A dot B of magnitude A on the bottom, magnitude of B on the bottom. So basically, if you have two vectors and you know their magnitudes because you can calculate that, and you can figure out the dot product, which we've figured out how to calculate already, if you do this division here and then you take the inverse cosine, you're going to get a number back, which is going to be the number of degrees or radians, whatever mode you're in, between these two vectors. That's very useful. It just depends on what you're given in your problem. If you have everything to get everything on the right-hand side, then you can do that. If you don't, then you may have to use other methods. The other thing I want to tell you, just as kind of a note, something that's obvious from this, but you may not totally see it at first. I'll just put it down here, note. If the dot product between these two vectors is 0, in other words, when you're trying to calculate this and you get A dot B and you get 0, then what's going to happen is the angle that you return back is going to be 90 degrees between the vectors. That's very consistent with everything we've said. If you were to get a dot product of 0, then you would have a 0 on top divided by anything gives you a 0. Inverse cosine of 0 is 90 degrees. So if you get an A dot B back of 0, you're going to return 90 degrees.